Hi, welcome to the Software Engineering 1 Lecture 70, Project Management. So the project management is about organizing, planning, and scheduling the software projects. And the object here is to introduce the project management and to describe its distinct characteristics. Apart from that, we also have to discuss project planning and project planning processes. Thirdly, we also to show the graphical schedule representations that are used by the project management, and to discuss the notation of the risk and the risk management process. So the topic we're covering today is the management activity, the project planning, the project scheduling, and project management. So the definition for the software project management is concerned with the activities involved in ensuring the software is developed on time and on schedule, in accordance with the requirements of the organization developing the procedure of the software. And the project management is needed because software development is always subject to the budget and the schedule constraints that are set by the organization or by the developing the software. The software management distinguishes the software is intangible, and the software engineering is not recognized as an engineering discipline with the same status as mechanical electronic engineering. The software development process is not standardized, and many software are like a sign-off project. The reason why it's a sign-off here, I'm going to make sure with the professor. And the management activities, what are the key things that we are going to cover here? The first thing is to write the proposal. Apart from that, we are going to do the project planning and project scheduling. Thirdly, we are going to do the project costing, and then we are going to the project monitoring and reviewing. We are going to going through this step by step and trying to dynamically monitor this. And the personal selection and evaluation is just like who do you think you can trust. And finally, it's the report writing and presentation. That is the final stage of the software. And the management commodity is just like this kind of stuff is not only constrained to the domain of the software, and many techniques of the engineering project management are equally applicable to software engineering management. For example, the technically complex engineering system tend to suffer from the same problem of the software system. So apart from that, we're going to have the project staffing that not every people is ideal to work on this project, and for example, the project budget may not allow to use the high-paid staff, and staff with appropriate experience may not be available. Apart from that, the organization may wish to develop employee skills on the software project. The managers have to work within these three constraints, especially when there is an international storage story of talented staff, IT staff. So, when it comes to the project planning, probably the most time-consuming project management activity, and it is a continuous activity from the initial concept to the through to the system delivery. The plan must be regularly revised as new information may become available, and various different types of plan may be developed to support the main project plan. That is very interesting. That originally we developed the first plan, but something must be changed to make the revisions and so forth. Therefore, that is related to project planning of great importance. And the other thing is about the types of the project plan. So we're going to have the initial, the quality plan. We're going to describe the quality procedures and standards that will be used within the project. And we also have the validation plan. It describes the approach, resources, and schedules used for the system validation. So we have the configuration management plan, which describes the configuration management processes and the structures to be used. Maintenance plan is that projects the maintenance requirement of the system and the maintenance cost, and the and the effects required. Finally, we have the staff development plan, which describes how the skills and experiences of the project team members will be developed. It's just like, it's about the how this, you took this part, you took this part, and so forth. And the project plan structure is that we're going to have the introduction, the project organization, the risk analysis, the hardware and software resources requirements, and the work breakdown, the project scheduling and monitoring and reporting the mechanism. So the activities in a project should be organized to proceed a tangible output for the management to judge this project. And we're going to have some milestones, which are the endpoint of the process activity and the delivery that the project results related to deliver to the customer. So waterfall processes allows for the straightforward distinguish between process and process. But things are now, this is a waterfall process milestone. For example, we have the activity of the feasibility study, which will generate the milestone of the feasibility report. After that, we're going to have the requirement analysis, which will generate the requirements definition. Thirdly, we're going to do the prototype development, and it will definitely have the milestone of the evaluation report. Finally, we have the design study, which we're going to make the hierarchy design. Requirement. Why in the requirement engineering? Yeah. This is just all the procedures defined within the requirement engineering process. And finally, we have the requirement engineering specification, and which will generate the specification documents, requirement documents. So in terms of the project scheduling, we're going to split the project into tasks and going to estimate the time and the resources required for each task. And we're going to organize the tasks concurrently to make the optimal use of the workforce and to minimize the task dependency to avoid the delay, because the dependency is going to make it a serial schedule. And the effectiveness is the dependency of the project manager, institution, and experiences. So the scheduling problem is that the estimating the difficulty of the problem is hard to do, and therefore, if we estimate the cost of the estimating the cost of developing a solution is hard. The productivity is not proportional to the number of people working on a task, and adding people to the late project may be even later due to the communication overheads. The unexpected, because things like that, if you are a team working together, but additionally another people come in, things may not, the communication may be harder, right? And they always allow for the contingency in planning, which means that some emergencies may happen, and you just need to plan for them. Apart from that, we're going to have the bar chart and the activity network, which is a kind of graphical notation to illustrate the project schedule and show the project breakdown into tasks. And the tasks should not be too small. The activity chart shows the task dependency and the critical path. The bar chart shows the schedule against the calendar time. So the bar chart is that the bar chart is it's just to show how this the task are going to take for the time and for the dependencies and so forth. So, for example, if it is a calendar based, and it can be like that, but this one cannot have the calendar, right? No calendars. And and apart from that, I think these two are equivalent. And in terms of this one, we are going to know that we start from the start, And we're going to go to the task 1, which takes around 8 days, and we're going to take from the milestone 1, and we're going to, since this one may take little time, but all these tasks must be done, so the minimum time to finish is the length of the longest critical path. So in this case, it's just this one. So apart from that, we're going to have the activity timeline, which means that it's just like a Gantt chart, and we have the different tasks, and starting at the different time to. Thirdly, we have the staff allocation, which describes another dimension of the staff and the task, which is just the which task should be done within this period, and so forth. And the PERT chart is especially defining the starting point and ending point of this starting point and ending point of the task. For example, it's just like the early start, early late, and early end and late end. And the early, what if the early start and early late start is the same, together with the early end and late end are the same? Then it will be the critical. Yeah. What is the slack is 0, or it is critical. So apart from that, we are going to talk about the risk management. It's about identifying the risk and planning to minimize their effects on the project. And the risk is probably that some adverse circumstances will occur, and the project's risk may affect the schedule and resources. The product risk may affect the quality and the performance of the software to be developed. The business risk of the organization developing the procedure and the software. So additionally, we are going to talk about the risk management processes. And for example, we have the risk identification, which identifies the product, and the business risk. And the risk analysis is to assess the likelihood and the consequences of this risk. And the risk planning is trying to draw a plan to minimize the effects of the risk. And the risk monitoring is to monitoring this dynamically monitoring this risk throughout this process. The risk identification, we have the technology risk, people risk, organizational risk, requirements risk, and estimation risk. So, for example, technology risk is that sometimes the maybe database cannot handle this kind of overwhelming access, and the people risk is that sometimes the people may be lazy, some may be well, and the organizational is that maybe the organization has some financial problems to be handled. The tool is just like maybe the case is not working, the MATLAB is crashing, and the requirement is that the changing requirement which requires the major it's just like the change of the requirement, and the estimation is just like the time required to develop the software. And the risk analysis is trying to assess the probability and seriousness of each risk. And the risk assess will have the probability and the risk effects. The probability may be very low, moderate, high, or very high. And the risk assessment is catastrophic, serious, tolerable, and insignificant. So, for example, we have the organization has a financial problem. The probability is low, but the effect is catastrophic. And maybe the code generated by case 2 is insufficient. The probability is moderate, but the effect is insignificant. And the risk planning is that considering each task, each risk, and develop the strategies to manage this task, to manage this risk. And we're going to avoid the avoidance strategies and the minimal strategy and the contingency plan. It's just like, well, in Chinese it's called 防范于未然, okay, avoidance. And after that, is what if it happens, and we're going to minimize the consequences for that. Trying to, and finally, in order to do that, we need the contingency plan. Oh yeah, it's a minimization strategy that trying to reduce the risk that may cause to the whole product. So, example, we have some risk factors. We also have some maybe technology and people, organization, tools, and case. The potential indicators that the technology is like the lake delivery of hardware and or support software. We report main technical problem. The people is just like poor staff, poor relationship among the teams, and the organization is like the organization. Lack of the senior management. The tools is that it's reluctant by the team member to use tools, and requirements. Many requirement change requires and customer complaints. As mentioned, is failure to meet the agreed schedule and failure to clear the reported defects. So the project management tool is online is Zhuhu, and in this lecture, we know that the good project management is essential for project success, and the intangible nature of the software makes a problem for the management. The manager have to deliver the role, but the most significant activities are planning, estimation, and scheduling. The planning and estimation are interactive process which continues throughout the course of the project. Additionally, we have the project milestone is a predictable state where some formal report of the process is presented to the management. The risk may be the project risk, product risk, and business risk. And the risk management is concerned with identifying the risks that may affect the project and planning to ensure that these tasks are not developed to major trends.